I never imagined I would be the sort of woman who would pause at her own bedroom door, not due to the fact that I had misplaced my keys, not due to any lapse in memory. Yet, a lingering fear held me back. A fear of the unknown that awaited beyond that threshold. That night, I found myself standing there, completely still. My hand rested upon the doorknob, a moment suspended in time. My heart raced with a fervor that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the hallway, and the stillness enveloping me. It was dense, a silence so profound it envelops you, amplifying your thoughts until they echo in the stillness, louder than they ought to be. Little did I know, a transformation was on the horizon, ready to reshape my existence. There was no forewarning, there was no time to prepare, only a fleeting glimpse, a fleeting vision of a secret I was never meant to behold. It all began with the sight of Adam in action. Adam, my beloved stepson. Now, gather round and lend me your ears before your imagination takes flight. Allow me to share something important with you. This tale isn't one that flows effortlessly from the lips. It carries a weighty essence. It lacks charm. And it certainly isn't straightforward. It's the sort of tale that twists your insides. The kind that stirs you from slumber at 3 a.m., prompting you to linger in the shadows, lost in contemplation. What twists and turns led me to this moment? For I'm not a villain in this tale. This was not part of my design. This was not something I sought out. I was merely a woman who had wandered through the shadows of solitude for what felt like an eternity. I lost touch with the sensation of being truly noticed. And Adam, he beheld me. Yet, I find myself leaping forward in the tale. Allow me to transport you to a different time. Not to the precise moment just yet, but rather to the journey that brought me here. To that door. That moment of pause, that decision. Have you ever stepped into a house that appears flawless from the exterior? What a lovely lawn, a pristine driveway, and vibrant flowers adorning the porch, yet within lies merely a gathering of individuals donning masks of pretense. That was the place where my heart resided, a man devoted to his work, often at the expense of his time at home, who engaged with me as if we were colleagues, who had not laid a hand upon me. It truly resonated with me. In nearly 2 years. In the quiet moments, I would tally the instances each week when his gaze found me. In time, I ceased to keep track, and then arrived Adam, 19, considerate, humble yet reserved. He took up residence following some challenges with his mother. I refrained from asking questions. It simply wasn't my role, yet, at times, a certain glimmer flickered in his gaze, as if he bore a weight that was far too great. Isn't it amusing how those who are fractured can recognize one another? Yet, I maintained my distance. I was compelled to. I held the role of his stepmother. I prepared a meal. All tidied up, inquired about his lessons, kept to my path, until that fateful night, that singular instant. In a moment that felt like a twist of fate, I stumbled upon a sight that was never intended for my eyes. In that fleeting instant, when I stumbled upon Adam in a moment so intimate, so unguarded, it took my breath away. And what deepened the turmoil? What truly plunged the blade deeper? Did that have anything to do with me? How I longed to claim that I simply turned my back and let it slip from my memory. I longed to share that I faced him head-on. There are countless thoughts swirling within me, yearning to be expressed. Yet, the reality is far more complicated than that. And if you've ever found yourself in solitude, imagine feeling utterly isolated, surrounded by a crowd yet completely disconnected. Have you ever strolled by a mirror, only to find yourself staring at a stranger reflected back? Have you ever yearned for a fleeting moment of connection so intensely that it sent shivers down your spine? Perhaps, if you open your mind just a little, you might grasp how the events came to be as they are. Before I continue on this journey, imagine the weight of a secret resting heavily upon your chest. A burden you bear each day, its presence a constant reminder of the untold story within. Have you ever felt the urge to unleash the truth, yet hesitated? pondering how others might perceive you in the aftermath. Go ahead and give that like button a tap. And if you're new here, gather round and welcome to the tale of shocking infidelity saga. In this space, we unveil authentic tales that challenge your perceptions of love, loyalty, and the depths of the human heart. Become a part of our deeply authentic community. In this space, we embrace understanding. Allow me to transport you to that fateful night, to the hallway. To the quietude before the door. Uncertainty gripped me, a hesitation lingering in the air, as if the threshold held secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. Yet, it happened regardless. I once envisioned that stepping into the role of a stepmom would envelop me in a comforting embrace. As if caressed by a soft breeze. Something that fosters growth and warmth. Nurturing another's journey of growth. Providing direction. Providing a gentle refuge. Yet, it merely seemed like another item to check off on a never-ending list of obligations. Gather the essentials from the market. Engage in the art of laundry. Reach out to Adam. Wear a smile at the dinner table, even in the silence that lingers among the guests. At the age of 38, I find myself reflecting on the chapters of my life. 7 years of marriage have woven a rich tapestry of shared experiences. Once, I believed I was fortunate. My husband Daniel, he has achieved great success. He ensured that we lived in a lovely home, had our cars parked in the driveway, secured insurance, and crafted a plan for our golden years. Yet, he ceased to gaze upon me ages past. I don't believe it was meant to be personal at all. Perhaps he simply lost the way, forgot how to reach me, as if I held significance, how to engage in conversation with me without glancing at his phone between sentences, how to position ourselves in a way that transcends the ordinary, transforming our time together from mere colleagues sharing a break room into something more profound. He often ventures beyond the familiar, wandering far from home, journeys for work, gatherings of minds, gatherings that stretch into the night. Occasionally, he reaches out with a message to see how things are going. At times, he simply does not. Yet, what pierced the heart the deepest was the profound silence that had settled over the house. Not from peace but from distance. The silence thickened as Adam stepped into the room. Once upon a time, there was a young man named Adam, who was just 19 years old. Daniel's child from his first union. He was never meant to be a part of our lives. He lived a life uniquely his own, moving to the beat of his own drum, all while navigating the intricate dynamics of his relationship with his mother. Yet, an unexpected twist unfolded in their journey together. It was a subject that lingered in the shadows, a whisper that few dared to voice. Before I realized it, he was carrying in boxes and arranging them in the guest room down the hall. At first, I found myself uncertain about my emotions regarding it. Well, he's not my son. Yet, a sense of responsibility lingered within me. I began crafting more evening meals, affixing messages to the refrigerator door, inquiring about his lessons, even when all I received was a shrug or a mumbled "it's fine." He possessed a calm demeanor, exuding politeness and respect in every interaction. Yet, within him lingered a profound sadness. It was as if he bore a burden far heavier than what one of his years ought to endure. And every now and then, I'd notice him observing me, not in a way that felt inappropriate at the time, just in a manner that was distinct. It was as if he glimpsed the depths beyond my facade, and perhaps that was the source of my greatest fear. For Daniel, I had become a mere shadow, fading from his sight, not who I truly was behind the facade and the rehearsed grins, not the woman who wept in the shower, occasionally seeking to release an emotion she couldn't quite articulate. He remained mostly silent in his presence, yet his silence carried a weight unlike Daniel's. Didn't close the door on me. It beckoned me closer. The dwelling, in all its presence, offered no solace. Vast, pristine, and frigid, everything is perfectly in harmony, not a photo frame turned askew. One might imagine that a setting such as that would evoke feelings of safety and comfort. Yet, it seemed more akin to a gallery of memories. It felt as though we were merely acting, maintaining a facade, hesitant to delve into anything truly genuine. We gathered around the dining table. 3 chairs occupy. An emptiness lingered in the room as Daniel savored each bite. He found himself glancing through his emails, weaving through the digital messages like a thread in a tapestry. Adam's gaze remained fixed on his plate. And what about me? I would wear a smile. I would engage in light conversation. I would inquire about the happenings of each person's day. Then, I would quietly clear the dishes, lost in my thoughts as it ever was. There were moments when I found myself lingering at the kitchen sink, long after the dishes had been scrubbed clean, simply clutching the sponge and gazing out the window, drifting through thoughts, unanchored by any specific notion, simply allowing the stillness to envelop me. There was a moment, though I can't pinpoint when, that everything began to change, when Adam's presence transformed from an unwelcome intrusion into a reflective mirror. Perhaps it was the manner in which he expressed his gratitude following the meal, even when the world turned away, or how he would perceive even the slightest change I made. It's akin to donning a new necklace, or shifting my hair to the opposite side. Or perhaps it was simply that he noticed me, not the way a man gazes upon a woman. Not at this moment. Yet, the manner in which an individual gazes upon another reveals the hidden fractures within them. It was not love. It wasn't longing. It was acknowledgement. And that sort of thing. Such a captivating focus. It approaches quietly, catching you off guard. It invites you to ponder what treasures have eluded your grasp, and what steps you could take to experience that once more. On a particular night, I returned home sooner than I had anticipated. It unfolded unexpectedly. The meeting I had anticipated was called off, and once more, Daniel was away on his travels. I recall the moment I drove into the driveway, greeted by the sight of all the lights extinguished. Save for that gentle orange light seeping from Adam's window above. The house seemed to linger in a moment of silence, as if it were pausing, waiting for something to unfold. I eased the front door open, moving as silently as possible. It was as if I wished to keep the stillness undisturbed. Perhaps I simply preferred to keep my return a secret. I'm uncertain. The floorboards groaned beneath my footsteps, a sort of creak that whispers secrets, echoing in the stillness, a sound that tells you you're treading where you shouldn't be. The living room remained pristine, as if time had paused in its embrace. There are no dishes in the sink. Silence envelops the room, as the television remains mute. Only the gentle whisper of stillness, the kind that seems to gaze back at you. I made my way upstairs, pondering whether Adam was buried in homework or perhaps dozing off with the light still aglow. As I ascended to the landing, a sound caught my attention. Not a melody. Silence reigns. Another tale awaits. Gentle. Melotte. WHISP. Oh, why? My heart leapt with surprise. I reassured myself that I had no desire to trespass into his private world. I urged myself to simply continue on my path. Yet, an unseen force compelled me to pause. His door stood slightly ajar, merely a touch, just enough to allow a sliver of that warm light to spill into the hallway, just enough for me to catch the whispers of secrets not meant for my ears, and sufficient for my eyes to behold. I had no intention of eavesdropping. I found myself wandering without a purpose, yet my gaze seized it before my mind could fully comprehend. He lay upon his bed, his back gently arched, as his hand wandered beneath the blanket. A glow of his laptop screen illuminated his face, casting a familiar chill across the room. In that fleeting instant, the air seemed to vanish from my lungs. It wasn't the action he was taking. It was the spectacle that held his gaze. It was myself. It took a moment to register, as it was quite dated. A video I had almost let slip from my memory. Once upon a time, there was a tale of me and Daniel from years gone by, One of those intimate moments we captured during a rare night filled with fervor. Back when fervor truly existed, I had completely forgotten where we had tucked it away. I believed it had vanished forever. Yet, there it stood, and Adam observed it unfold before him. Observing me, I remained utterly silent. There I stood, a moment frozen in time, enchanted in stillness. A part of me yearned to leap forward, to seize the laptop and unleash a shout. Another part, the part I wished to forget, remained motionless. I retreated gradually, my breath hitching in my throat, my hands trembling with unease. The hallway closed in around me, the air heavy with an unspoken tension. I entered my room and closed the door softly behind me, much like a spirit retreating into its sanctuary. And then, the tale unfolds. I simply remained in that spot, gazing into the void. Parched lips. Heart pounding. I experienced. Repulsed. Transgressed. Perplexed. Yet, there lies another layer. Something I preferred to leave unnamed. For the most troubling aspect wasn't that Adam had his eyes on me. The most challenging aspect was the emotions it stirred within me, unfazed. Not averse. However, witnessed, seeking, and I loathed myself for that. I perched on the edge of my bed, trembling, as I sought to unravel the tangled threads of what had just transpired. What is the story behind that video? How did he stumble upon it? Was he aware that I had caught sight of him? Did he wish for me to witness? I attempted to convince myself that it was merely a twist of fate, that he happened upon it. It held no significance. Yet, within the depths of my being, I held a different truth. Of late, his gaze held a certain depth that spoke volumes. Gentle, intrigued. It was as if I transcended the role of mere stepmother. I enveloped myself in a robe and reclined upon the blankets that enveloped the night, gaze fully alert, gazing up at the ceiling, revisiting the scene time and again. Not merely what met my eyes, yet what stirred within me. For a reason, the world had changed, and no matter how hard I endeavored to convince myself it was merely a fleeting instant. It was clear to me that this marked the dawn of a new chapter. The following morning, I carried on as if nothing had transpired. A smile graced my lips. As the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, I carefully poured it into the waiting cup, inquired of Adam whether he had a desire for toast. He responded with a familiar affirmation, just as he always had, respectful, serene, as if all was as it should be. Yet, everything felt out of place. Not any longer. I found myself seated opposite him at the kitchen table, observing the gentle wisps of steam dance upward from my cup. My belly shifting with each fleeting moment. He met my gaze head-on. Yet, he did not pursue them. Either. There I was, simply sitting in that moment, partaking in a meal, serene and unremarkable, just like any other day. Perhaps that was the very thing that deepened the turmoil. The uncertainty. Did he realize I was watching? Did he feel a sense of shame? Did he wish for me to witness? Or was it truly just an error in the grand tapestry of events? Could it be a bizarre, dark twist of fate? All day long, I endeavored to push it from my mind. I tidied up the items that there was no need for cleaning. Bookshelves have been rearranged. The pantry has been beautifully reorganized. Yet, each time I shut my eyes, it unfolded before me. That image, that instant, that individual, observing me. I whispered to myself that perhaps it was merely a spark of curiosity. Perhaps he stumbled upon the video by mere chance. Perhaps he clicked, unaware of what lay ahead. Yet, as I lingered in contemplation, clarity began to unfold. It was not that. It was not by chance. It was intentional. What sent shivers down my spine even more than that realization was the depth of my own feelings. For beneath all the chaos, the disarray, the embarrassment, there lay a peculiar, dreadful excitement. I despised it. I despised myself for it. Yet, It was present. This strange flutter in my chest felt as though something had stirred to life. I began to observe details that had previously escaped my attention, or perhaps aspects I had simply chosen to overlook. The gaze Adam cast upon me as I leaned down to retrieve an item from the low cabinet was something to behold. The path. He stayed in the kitchen after dinner, savoring the moment, observing me as I tidy up. The manner in which his eyes danced, neither impolite nor hostile, but with intention and purpose. It felt as though he was perceiving me through a lens that had long been absent in my life. And once I beheld it, it became an indelible part of my vision. It had been an eternity since anyone gazed upon me in such a way. Once upon a time, Daniel engaged in the early days of our union. In the beginning of our journey, once, he would sneak up behind me as I prepared the meal. Envelop him in an embrace. Me. Press your lips against the nape of my neck. That version of him vanished somewhere between the 3rd year and the 4th. Now, it brushed against me. A fleeting moment. A gentle touch upon the shoulder. Gently touch the arm. Automated. Empty. A gentle caress that whispers, I understand the unspoken connection between us. So here's a gesture of my affection. Yet. Adam's glances. They held depth. And once I came to that realization, I became acutely aware of his presence. His presence was palpable, a silent whisper that danced through the air, reaching me before I even had the chance to turn and see him. His footsteps echoed softly, more leisurely in my presence, gentler. As he spoke, his voice softened ever so slightly, as if he were sharing a secret just between us. Not merely in proximity to me. And what about me? I began to transform as well. In the beginning, it was but a whisper, innocuous. I reassured myself. I allow my robe to drape a bit more freely in the mornings. I chose to don tank tops rather than oversized t-shirts as I prepared breakfast. I didn't do it for him. That is what I continually reminded myself. Yet, deep down, I understood that this was not the reality. I found myself adorning a new style. Take your time, with greater attention, selecting materials that embraced the curves just so. When I sensed he could stroll by, I paused by the door of my room, savoring the moment just a bit longer. Lock set free. Skin retains the lingering warmth from the shower. I loathed myself for it. Yet, I pressed on. And when our eyes met, those 2 long glances exchanged across the kitchen or down the hall, my gaze unwavering. I ought to have. Yet, I chose not to. Instead, I found myself yearning for it. Yearning for that spotlight, such vibrant energy. The warmth that had eluded me for such an eternity. I nearly lost touch with that feeling. It was never about Adam. Initially. No. It was a tale woven around my essence, about experiencing a renewed sense of vitality. As if someone had caught a glimpse of me. And yet, each night as I settled into bed, the guilt surged forth like an unstoppable tide, overwhelming me completely. This was not right. Such a misstep. He was the son of my husband. Even if we had never shared a bond, our time together beneath the same roof was brief. It was filled with moments that lingered in the air, that was of no consequence. Yet, the distinction between what was deemed appropriate and what was considered forbidden had become more than just blurred. It was a poignant experience, transforming. It grows increasingly difficult to perceive. With each passing day, I sensed myself drawing nearer to it. Once upon a time, begun with the smallest of details. Pure and simple. They revealed their charm when viewed from a distance. Yet, when examined closely, their innocence faded away. As I made my way home from the store for the very first time, an unexpected event unfolded. With bags in both hands, my arms ached from the weight of the journey. As I fumbled with the keys, the door swung open unexpectedly, even before my knuckles had a chance to tap against it. Once upon a time, there was a character named Adam. At first, he remained silent. He reached out and took the heavier bags from my arms, his fingers lightly grazing against mine. It was fleeting, yeah, I sensed its presence, like a flicker of light, or perhaps a curious inquiry. Once, there lingered a question between us, one we were both too timid to voice. With careful hands, he brought them into the kitchen, placing them down with a tender touch, as if he feared they might shatter. Then he gazed into my eyes, truly seeing me, and said, "You shouldn't have to bear all this weight by yourself." 6 words, that was all there was to it. Yet they remained by my side, for Daniel had long since stopped uttering words like those. Daniel believed I would take care of it all, gathering ingredients, crafting meals, tidying up, planning the day, sharing joy. And somehow, Adam, at just 19 years old, perceived more than the man I had shared my life with for 7 years. Following that moment, the nature of our dialogues transformed. They ventured further into the depths. In the beginning, it was merely light-hearted conversations in the kitchen, weaving together threads of music, school, and books. Yet, he began to pose genuine inquiries to me. Let me share a bit about who I am. Let me share with you the tale of my life. Let me share with you the tale of who I was before I took the step into marriage with his father. And when I spoke, he truly listened. Not with that unfocused, half-nodding look Daniel cast my way from behind the glow of his laptop screen. Adam absorbed every word with every fiber of his being. Inch closer, gaze into my eyes, answered in ways that made me feel understood, and I began to anticipate it with excitement. To him, on a moonlit evening, Daniel found himself away from home once more. As I settled into the cozy embrace of the living room, a glass of wine cradled in my hand, the gentle sounds of an old movie danced in the background. Adam stepped inside, pausing for a moment. Then, they settled onto the opposite end of the couch. There was a silence between us that lingered for some time, simply observed in quiet contemplation. Suddenly, the landscape transformed. As the scene unfolded, the couple shared a tender kiss. Gradually, with a sense of yearning, my body tightened, a call of anticipation winding within me. I averted my gaze from him. I was not required to. The atmosphere around me was undeniably changing. A few moments later, I extended my hand toward the remote. He arrived simultaneously. Our hands brushed against each other. We both took a moment to reflect, just the right amount of time for it to carry significance. Then he withdrew his hand. With a soft voice, he whispered an apology. I shook my head, yet I refrained from uttering that it was okay. I was unable to, for the simple reason that it was not. And it was. Following that, the touches grew more frequent, additional. Consider with intention. A gentle touch of his hand as he handed me the salt. His arm brushed against mine as we lingered in the hallway, the air thick with unspoken words. A gentle touch at the small of my back as he graciously stepped aside, allowing me passage through the door. Little details, simple to justify, yet I ceased to elaborate, for a fragment of my being yearned for their continuation. I found myself on a quest to seek him out, staying in the kitchen a bit longer, yearning for his descent, strolling through the garden as twilight descends, aware that he could be in pursuit, leaving my bedroom door ajar. Just a whisper of an opening, and then the notes began to flow. A hidden treasure lay nestled within the pages of a book I'd carelessly left on the couch. Only 5 words, inscribed in a chaotic scrawl. There's a depth to you that goes beyond their gaze. I gazed at it for what felt like an eternity. A few days later, the second arrived. It slipped beneath the sugar bowl resting on the kitchen counter. You are meant to be experienced, not merely observed. And then, if I had the power to rewrite time, I would begin with you. Every note sent a shiver through my chest, not with guilt but with a deep, lingering ache, longing for something just out of reach, something I shouldn't desire. I held on to every last one of them, concealed within a drawer, nestled among aged scarce and neglected birthday cards. Yet, I would venture out with them under the cloak of night. In a time when silence reigned supreme, and I savored them as if they were heartfelt messages from a bygone era I had never experienced. On a sunlit afternoon, I found myself, as I was tidying up the living room, I accidentally toppled Adam's sketchbook. It was never my intention to unveil it. I was merely gathering it in my hands, prepared to return it to its rightful place among the pages. Yet, the page lay wide open, and there I found myself, rendered with the delicate touch of pencil, gentle. Rich in detail, perched on the edge of my bed. I gently ran the brush through my hair. That moment came rushing back to me. It was merely a week ago. Unbeknownst to me, he had been observing from the shadows. I gazed at the sketch, my hand quivering with anticipation. He had seized a moment so personal, so unfiltered. It was as if I were gazing upon a reflection of a self I had long forgotten. Not the weary partner. Not the unseen figure. Yet there was a longing within someone. Could it be a figment of my imagination? Or was he beckoning something forth? I cautioned myself to keep my distance. This was perilous. That this was not right. There I was, dancing with flames in a dwelling crafted from parched timber. Yet, I pressed on. The door remained ajar, left unlatched by my hand. I held on to the notes, refusing to let them slip away. I left the sketch untouched. I pressed on, one tiny fragment of time, unfolding gently, and deep down, I sensed the path it was taking me on. The evening on that fateful day, the sky roared with fury. Thunder rolled low in the distance, the kind that resonates deep within your chest. The rain poured down with relentless fury, raking across the windows as if it sought entry. Once more, Daniel found himself away from home. A gathering of minds this time. In a place where the sun shines bright. I believe. I did not inquire. The abode carried an air of change, not merely silent, but electrifying, weighty, as if it were pausing in anticipation. As the clock struck 9, darkness enveloped the room as the power flickered and vanished. In an instant, everything changed. In the depths of shadow, silence reigns. The refrigerator stands still, devoid of its usual hum. The hallway nightlight casts no glow. Only quietude and the whisper of the rain pounded relentlessly against the roof. I set the scene by lighting a few candles and arranging them throughout the living room, creating an inviting atmosphere. The flickering light cast shadows that danced across the walls, creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and anticipation. Shadows waltz. The tempest beyond seemed a mere whisper against the tumult brewing within my soul. As Adam descended the staircase, the world around him seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Without a shirt, just wearing loose sweatpants, and my hair still damp from the shower, he halted in his tracks, the flickering candle casting shadows as he caught sight of me. Then a faint smile graced their lips. "Are you all right?" he inquired. I nodded, striving to prevent the house from descending into darkness. He settled down on the floor, facing me. We stood across from each other at the coffee table, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow between us. We exchanged words. At first glance, it was nothing profound, merely a reflection on how the storm stirred memories of childhood. How he once did. Conceal yourself beneath the blankets and imagine that the thunder is merely the sound of giants engaging in a game of bowling high above in the heavens. I chuckled, not for the humor, but for the warmth that came from his voice, a reminder of the human connection. Then the silence enveloped the room, stretching on. Not uncomfortable, merely rich and profound. He cast his gaze upon me. I gazed intently, and the weight of it all became too much to bear. I inquired gently, my voice barely rising above a whisper, "What was it about that video that caught your attention?" He blinked and swallowed, a moment of hesitation hanging in the air. I could see the answer in his eyes before he spoke. For it was the one moment I witnessed you being cherished. Once upon a time. There were. Words shattered the silence, revealing something within me that I had kept locked away for years. I remained silent. I was unable to. I gazed at him. The candlelight dancing between us, wrapping the room in a cocoon of warmth, creating a space that felt smaller, more private, more intimate. He extended his hand cautiously, as if he feared I might pull away. His fingers brushed against my hand. I remained steadfast. His fingers danced softly over mine, and I promise you, it felt as if the entire universe vanished. The tempest, the weight of remorse, the long stretch of quiet. It was only him and me, surrounded by the silence of all the words left unspoken. My eyes ignited with a fierce intensity. I sensed the tears welling up before they cascaded down. A single tear traced its way down my cheek. With a gentle motion, he lifted his hand and brushed it away with his thumb. And then, a profound stillness enveloped the moment. Silence reigns, devoid of sound or life. Hold on a second, and then he kissed me, gentle at first, cautious as if he were awaiting the nod, and I offered it. I kissed him back, and once that boundary was crossed, everything began to unravel. I do not recall the moment of standing. It's a blur how we transitioned from the living room to the couch. All I recall is warmth, the surface, the air within. He cradled me gently, as if I were a delicate treasure, both fragile and essential. In the moment I released all that I believed defined my strength. The manner in which our bodies communicated was like a forgotten dialect, one I hadn't encountered in ages. In that moment, fear was a distant whisper, absent from the scene. Without a moment's pause, simply yield to him, to the one who listens within, to the woman I once was, and the one I never had the chance to become. In the stillness that followed, we found ourselves in wine, the soft glow of the candle flickering gently as it burned low. I gazed at the ceiling, my body still resonating, my heart laid bare and wide open, and I understood. The moment it ended, I felt it deep within me. Everything had transformed. There was no turning back now. There's no taking it back. There's no denying that it took place. There is no justification strong enough to set things straight. We had crossed the line that didn't just blur. It shattered into countless fragments, and I found myself lost, uncertain of my own identity. The dawn that followed left me unable to meet his gaze. Before the sun graced the sky, I stirred from slumber, enveloping myself in my robe, and descended the stairs as if fleeing from the shadows of the past. The candle had flickered its last light upon the table. The couch cushions bore the marks of a recent tale, still holding the impressions of moments shared. The blanket we once cherished lay carelessly on the floor, a silent witness to the moments we shared. Everything around me seemed overwhelmingly loud, as if the room itself was crying out in anguish, with hands trembling like leaves in the wind. I brewed a cup of coffee, didn't even take a sip, simply sought a way to pass the time. As the sound of his footsteps echoed on the stairs, I found myself paralyzed in place. As he stood in the doorway, his eyes gentle and his lips slightly parted as if on the verge of speaking, I averted my gaze. The hope in his face was something I found hard to bear. For him, hope was the spark that ignited his belief that something could emerge from this, and I couldn't allow him to hold on to that belief. He lingered for a moment, anticipation hanging in the air. Yet, I turned my back to him, feigning the act of cleaning a counter that was already spotless. Hey, he spoke softly. Can we? Today is filled with tasks waiting to unfold, and I've just stepped into the narrative. My voice felt out of place. Concise, precise. He took a moment to gather his thoughts. I averted my gaze from him. I was unable to. Very well, he replied after a brief pause, silent, wounded, and then he strolled into the distance. I collapsed onto a stool, my heart racing and my stomach in knots. What had I wrought? Every fiber of my being throbbed with pain, not merely in a physical sense, but in this profound, aching manner. As if a hidden chamber within me had burst forth, and now I found myself attempting to close it, my hands trembling with uncertainty, Throughout the day, I kept my distance from him. If I heard him upstairs, I remained below. As I ventured into the kitchen, I paused, listening intently until the sounds of movement faded into silence. I convinced myself that I was shielding him, yet deep down, I knew I was merely concealing my own fears from him, from within me, from what we experienced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel made his way back home. With a heavy thud, his suitcase met the floor, and his voice resonated throughout the house, striking a tone that felt almost too ordinary, too bright. A shiver ran down my spine. He pressed his lips gently against my cheek. I recalled, he observed. I could perceive it in the subtle shift of his smile, yet he remained silent. Instead, he inquired about why I had prepared for dinner. I found myself pushing through, balancing plates while feigning that all remained unchanged. Yet, it was not. There was nothing. At last, Adam made his descent, more gradual than the norm. He averted his gaze from mine. Seated across the table, he hardly grazed his meal, but my gaze remained fixed on my plate throughout the entire experience. Daniel sought to share the tale of his journey, inquired of Adam regarding his experiences at school, crafted quips that fell flat. Not a single one of us found it amusing. Once the dinner plates were cleared, Adam vanished into the realm above. Daniel regarded me with a piercing look. "Is everything all right?" "Indeed," I remarked. Swift as the wind, feeling a bit weary. He chose not to push. He simply did not. Yet, I could sense it. He felt an unsettling presence in the air, insufficient to lay blame upon me. Just enough to spark curiosity. That night, as Daniel reached for me in bed, I flinched once more. I mentioned that a headache was troubling me. He turned away in silence, drifted into slumber. As I lay there in the dark, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, I could feel the tempest brewing within me. The days that followed grew increasingly bleak. Adam scarcely uttered a word to me. His eyes, once bright with warmth, now carried the weight of confusion and an unspoken depth. Deceit. I had bestowed upon him a treasure, only for him to seize it back in an instant. I would allow him to think there was a doorway, and then, with a decisive motion, it was shut tight. He felt no anger. He was not devoid of warmth. He was simply wounded, and it shattered my very being. I sought to wipe it away. Yet, every chamber murmured the tales of our deeds. The sofa, the corridor stretched the head, the staircase, in the bathroom. The mirror held a stranger's gaze, a reflection that felt foreign and unfamiliar. I drifted through the days, a mere echo of who I once was. The weight of guilt bore down on me relentlessly. Yet the ache lingered just as persistently, the pang of an experience that seemed genuine. Despite its flaws, there was no one to share my thoughts with. Not my companions, not my partner, not even I. Truly, thus, I adorned myself with a fragrance of guilt, a scent that clung to my skin, unseen by many yet ever present. And Adam. He grew more silent, withdrawing into the shadows, as if he were bracing himself against a sudden jolt of my decisions. Or perhaps he finally recognized me for who I truly am. A woman adrift in the vastness of her own void, yearning for a touch of warmth, even if it scorched the very essence of my being. The dawn that followed, I found it impossible to meet his gaze. As the world lay still in slumber, I stirred from my dreams before the first light of dawn graced the horizon, enveloped in the warmth of my robe, and descended the stairs as if I were in a race against the shadows of the past. The candle lay extinguished upon the table, its flickering light now a memory. The couch cushions bore the marks of a recent presence, still holding the impressions of moments shared. There lay the blanket we once embraced, now carelessly cast aside upon the floor. Everything around me felt overwhelming, as if the very walls were shouting in my direction. With hands trembling, I brewed a cup of coffee, didn't even take a sip, simply sought a way to pass the time. As the sound of his footsteps echoed on the stairs, I found myself paralyzed in place as he stood in the doorway, his eyes gentle and lips slightly parted as if words were on the brink of escaping. I averted my gaze. The hope in his face was something I found hard to bear, for he held on to hope, believing that something could emerge from this, and I couldn't allow him to hold that belief. He lingered for a moment, anticipation hanging in the air. Yet I turned my back to him, feigning a task of cleaning the counter that was already spotless. Hey, he spoke softly. Can we? Today is filled with tasks awaiting my attention, and I've just stepped in. My voice felt off, as if it belonged to someone else. Concise. Precise. He took a moment to gather his thoughts. I averted my gaze, unable to meet his eyes. Very well, he replied after a brief pause, silent, wounded. And then he strolled into the distance. I collapsed onto a stool, my heart racing and my stomach churning. What had I woven into the fabric of my tale? Every fiber of my being throbbed with pain, not merely in a physical sense, but in a profound, aching manner that resonates deeply. It felt as though a fissure had formed within me, and I was desperately attempting to seal it with trembling fingers. Throughout the day, I steered clear of him. If I heard him upstairs, I remained below. As I ventured into the kitchen, I paused, listening intently until the sounds of movement faded into silence. I convinced myself that I was safeguarding him. Yet, the reality was that I was concealing myself from him, from my own experiences, from what we created. As the evening unfolded, Daniel returned home, the sound of his suitcase echoing as it met the floor with a heavy thud, and his voice resonated throughout the dwelling. Too ordinary, excessively bright. A shiver ran down my spine. He pressed his lips gently against my cheek. I recalled, he observed. I could perceive it in the subtle wavering of his smile. Yet, he remained silent. Instead, he inquired about what I had prepared for dinner. I pushed myself through the serving plates, feigning that everything remained unchanged. Yet, it was not. There was nothing. Adam descended last, moving at a more leisurely pace than usual. He averted his gaze from mine. He sat across the table, his food barely disturbed. My gaze remained fixed on my plate throughout the entire experience. Daniel began to weave a tale about his journey, inquired of Adam regarding his experiences at school, crafted quips that fell flat. Not a single one of us found amusement. After dinner, Adam vanished into the realm above. Daniel regarded me with a piercing stare. Is everything all right? Indeed, I spoke a bit too quickly, feeling weary. He chose not to insist. He simply never did. Yet, I could sense it. He felt an unsettling presence in the air. Merely pointing fingers won't suffice. Just enough to spark curiosity. That night, as Daniel reached for me in bed, I flinched once more. I mentioned that a headache was troubling me. He turned away in silence, drifted into slumber. As I lay there in the dark, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, I could feel the tempest brewing within me now. The ensuing days unfolded with even greater turmoil. Adam hardly uttered a word to me. His eyes, once bright with warmth, now carried the weight of confusion and a hint of betrayal. I had bestowed upon him a gift, only to reclaim it in an instant. I would allow him to think there was a doorway, and then, with a decisive motion, it was shut tight. He felt no anger. He was not devoid of warmth. He was simply wounded, and it shattered my very being. I attempted to wipe it away, yet every chamber murmured of our deeds. The seat of comfort, the corridor stretched ahead. Once upon a time, there was a staircase. Even the mirror in the bathroom, where I glimpsed my reflection and found her unrecognizable. I drifted through the motions of life, a mere echo of my true self. The weight of guilt bore down on me relentlessly, yet the ache lingered just as persistently. The pang of an experience that seemed genuine, despite its flaws. There was no one to share my thoughts with. Not my companions, not my partner, not even I. Truly saw on the guilt-laden fragrance, a subtle essence clinging to my skin, unseen by many yet ever-present an atom. He grew more silent, withdrawn, as if he were bracing himself against the sudden jolt of my decisions. Or perhaps he finally perceived me for who I truly am. A woman adrift in the vastness of her own void, yearning for a touch of warmth, even if it scorched the very essence of my being. This is something I've kept to myself, not even my therapist. It has resided within me for an eternity, pressing against my ribs like a hidden truth yearning to break free. But tonight, I needed to allow it to unfold, not for absolution, not for salvation, simply to be acknowledged. For there are moments when the burden we bear in solitude grows more daunting than the very sin we seek to escape, and I'm weary of holding this back in quietude. Did I own what transpired, or was I merely a soul yearning for recognition, to be moved, to experience a spark after an eternity of emptiness? I'm not certain, yet I am aware of this. It's simple to speak of your actions until you find yourself in that very hallway with your hand resting gently on a doorknob, and your heart shattering within your chest over something you weren't even aware of. Able to share your thoughts with me in the comments. Have you ever ventured beyond a boundary that you couldn't return from? Have you ever gazed into the mirror and pondered, who have I become in this journey of life? What would you have chosen if you were in my shoes? And if this tale resonated with something within you, if it caused you to stop, stirred emotions within you, brought forth a memory of a part of yourself that you thought was lost to time, then share it with the world. Just like this captivating tale, pass it along to someone who may be bearing their own unseen burdens. And do consider subscribing to the shocking infidelity saga, where we unveil the whispers that linger in the shadows, bringing them into the light, illumination. For the reality is, each of us carries tales we fear to share. Yet, perhaps, it is in the sharing that the journey toward healing truly unfolds. And if you take away nothing else from the tales I've woven tonight, hold on to this. Loneliness is a perilous craving. Should you choose to overlook it for an extended period, should you act as though it is but a figment of your imagination, it will begin to draw sustenance from whatever lies nearest. Even if it's a tale that dances on the edge of the forbiddance, even if it's something that was never meant to be explored, even if it shatters you. So, step into the light and let your presence be known. Share your words. Experience. Extend your grasp before the stillness consumes you entirely.